Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey hit theaters on July 17th, 2026, written and directed by Christopher Nolan for Universal at a cost of $250 million production budget. It is the first feature film in the history of the medium shot end to end on 70mm IMAX film. It runs 172 minutes, and I spent 90 of those minutes checking how much runtime was left. This is a beautiful movie about people I never came to care about, and it is betting that if we just keep moving, you won't notice the flaws or be able to ask critical questions. I'm the real-life Fake Wizard, and this is a Fake Wizard's review of The Odyssey. If this video brings you any value, hit the subscribe button, as we're posting lots of reviews every single week. Nolan has been building towards this spectacle since 2008, when The Dark Knight became the first Hollywood movie to put action sequences on IMAX cameras. Every film since has handed more of the runtime over to the IMAX format. This movie, while being a Christopher Nolan adaptation of The Odyssey, is less about the Odyssey itself, debatably. This movie is the ultimate flag posting for Hollywood. The IMAX move, the casting direction, the changes to the story, the controversies surrounding the film, all of that is exterior. People care about everything around the movie. So we're going to try and talk about what's inside the movie in just a moment. When you think about the foundations of old Hollywood, Hollywood was built on the backs of epics. It was after making these epics in the 50s and 60s that people developed a reverence for Hollywood. Ten Commandments, Spartacus, Ben-Hur, and personally, I think Lawrence of Arabia in 1962 was the final epic of that style. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be until Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws, the Spielberg era, that things really kind of exploded back into being epic. But it was a different kind of epic. Nolan's The Odyssey is meant to be at the level of Ben-Hur and Lawrence of Arabia. It is meant to be an epic like that. But what I found, like this movie, is that they keep telling us things without proving them. Perhaps. The story is what you know. Odysseus wins the Trojan War with a wooden horse and then spends a decade failing to get home. The film opens on him washed up on an island where a nymph named Calypso keeps him sedated on lotus flowers so he cannot remember who he is. Back in Ithaca, because we're Greeks from Ithaca, his wife Penelope is holding off a palace full of suitors while his son Telemachus goes looking for a father he has never met. The film cuts between these 2 or 3 groups while Odysseus talks his way back through the voyage with Calypso. Nolan's Odyssey splits down the middle right around the 90-minute mark. The front half is Odysseus recounting his voyage to a woman on a beach. The back half is Matt Damon completing the journey home. The second half of this film is satisfying. Sure, I liked it very much. And whereas in the first half we were spending time with Tom Holland and Anne Hathaway and John Barenthal, all the supporting cast, right? Well, here in part 2, Matt Damon is the clear full focus, and the movie is a lot more interesting and a lot more compelling. And that's a problem. The front half is a slog. Odysseus and his men are lost at sea for years, and they make sure you feel all of those years. The story on screen suffers from and then syndrome, which is very boring. They fight the Cyclops, and then they run away, and then they fight the witch, and then they leave, and then they fight the armored dudes from the posters, and then they run away, and then, until part 2. Now, in the comments, you might say, Wizard, they fought the Cyclops and the witch in the source material. Yes, they did, but in the source material, there was more time spent with each circumstance that caused them to go from one event to the next event, instead of just and then. The Odyssey is a Monster of the Week structure stretched to prestige feature film length. The first 20 minutes of dialogue is extremely difficult to understand. The sound mixing is atrocious. The music is just not even very good. This is a movie made for subtitles. The soundtrack is loud ambient bursts instead of a proper orchestral score. Half of a good movie is a bad movie with a good ending. Which further brings me to the men on the voyage of the Odyssey. I don't care at all about Odysseus's men. The film never gives you a reason to. They get names, they get deaths, and the deaths are staged as if these guys are important. And I felt nothing, because the film didn't give me a reason to care about them. Towards Act 2, there is a moment where the witch says that deep down all of these men are pigs, even after turning them into pigs. You know, it's the men are pigs kind of trope. There is no rebuttal to that, to disprove her. Throughout the entire film, you don't find yourself rooting for these men because they're not given reason to be rooted for. They are insubordinate the entire time. They don't listen to their commanding officer. They cause trouble for themselves and others. And it's like, yeah, okay, in the poem, there's a mutiny and their fates are sealed because of it. But here, it would have been stronger to give us a reason to care about them before that point to make the mutiny more tragic. In this case, you're just excited that they're gone because they're out of the way, because they were annoying for 90 minutes. But perhaps the reason I didn't care about the crew is because in this film, you don't see the characters. You just see the actors. I sat in that theater for 3 hours and watched Matt Damon. A production this expensive assembles a cast this famous because famous faces move tickets, and the price of that is that the faces must vanish into the characters. Only Robert Pattinson escapes into his role. He outperforms the entire cast here. Anne Hathaway, who is 13 years older than Tom Holland, never sells you for a single second on being, firstly, Tom Holland's mother, but also anything other than Anne Hathaway. Matt Damon plays Matt Damon. Zendaya plays Zendaya. Charlize Theron is Charlize Theron. And then there's Jon Bernthal. And I like Jon Bernthal, I do. He phones this one in so hard, however, that I came to a very sad conclusion. Jon Bernthal has the same acting range as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. They play the same character in the same cadence in everything they're in. And I know that there are people online who are criticizing everyone for just sounding normal with no dialects, no voiceovers or anything, no special voices. And to their credit, it feels shockingly out of place to hear Jon Bernthal talking like, "Yeah, I'm the Punisher, and I'm also Menelaus. I'm a tough guy. I was on Hulu's The Bear. I'm Jon Bernthal." No, John, this is ancient Greece. It doesn't work here. Now, at 172 minutes, you'd think this film has time to breathe and to really work through all the scenes meticulously. This film seemingly sprints and also crawls. I don't know how they pulled it off. The scenes are flashing in front of your eyes, and yet nothing is happening, or you feel nothing, or things are happening, but it's all hard to care. I believe this is because of the 70mm IMAX hurdle. Chris Nolan said they had to film each shot in 3-minute increments, which means there is a cut every maximum 3 minutes. So we're constantly moving, but not necessarily going anywhere. We know that the source material demands that many of these scenes have significantly more context to them. Did that hit the cutting room floor because these IMAX movies must cap out at 3 hours? Possibly. Yes, the IMAX film projectors in the theaters can only fit 3 hours of movie in them maximum at a time. And I think the film suffered for this. Like earlier, we said that the men, there was no reason to care about them at all. Then we look at the other characters. With Cersei the Witch, she turns the men into pigs in a very body horror-esque scene, and it looks like it was almost all prosthetics to make that happen, which was very cool, very impressive work there. But in the story, that's a very serious act. It took a lot of effort from this witch to do that. There's a lot of meaning behind it. It makes very little sense that she would just undo it all because Odysseus asked her to, and then continues helping Odysseus with advice on what to do next in their adventure. Charlize Theron's Calypso holds a man in a chemical fog for 7 years, essentially assaulting him for all that time against his will, and we just gloss over that point, by the way. This man got Wonder Woman 84'd, and we just don't care. But that all just ends. He just leaves. There's no resolution for Calypso. There's hardly a reason for her to be included at all. Whereas in the source material, it is much more explained why things are happening. And that brings us to the obvious conclusion. When you look at the source material, the magic, the monsters, and the Greek gods, well, they're all present in whimsical fantasy. It helps you explain the plot a little bit better. It's the fantasy of the fantasy. You needed them for the plot. Removing them from this movie feels like removing puzzle pieces. And now there are all these holes in it that don't make sense. And that's only made worse by the Nolanfication of the film. Christopher Nolan has his own trope of going back and forth in time in his films. Sometimes it works. This movie spends most of the time recounting and explaining the past, and that's what we're watching with The Adventure. Do you remember Once Upon a Time, the live-action Disney show? Well, every episode in Once Upon a Time features something happening in present day, but needs to tell a story that happened in the past to make the current day conflict make more sense. I did not like it then, and I just don't care for it now. The bouncing back and forth with Odysseus telling Calypso the story just makes the missing pieces seem a little worse. It worked in Interstellar, don't get me wrong, but that's because Interstellar, the whole movie is fighting against time. With this movie, the staggering of plot is meant to deliver like a right hook when revelations are revealed, but because you're not emotionally attached to the characters, none of those reveals feel earned. The Odyssey is in theaters right now, and it's very hard to get IMAX tickets for it. It's not the worst movie of the year. It's not terrible beyond measure, but it's also not great. If it was more respectable to the audience's time, I might have rated it higher. I think 3 hours is way too long for this because it is a bore. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is a 5 out of 10. It's safe. It's more like a Odyssey, not an Odyssey. If you're going to see it, yeah, I say go for the IMAX because that's the whole experience that you're meant to get, and maybe you'll enjoy it. Bring earplugs because the sound mixing is offensive to the senses, but, you know, I like Matt Damon, I like Robert Pattinson, so maybe it wasn't all bad. It's not bad. It's not great. It's a movie. It's not an epic, but it's something. And that's about it. If this review brought you any value, hit the subscribe button as we're posting new reviews nearly every day. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire, and cancel your Disney Plus subscription.